There we go. And I'm going to start sharing my screen because that's the way we do it. Recording is going, and we are now live. So I'm really kind of shocked that anybody showed up to this webcast because it was such a disaster getting it set up. I made a couple of mistakes. Sierra made a couple of mistakes. I can't remember why. We were like in a hurry.
Times. John was
dates,
traveling.
times, time zones. It was just bad all the way around. So thank you very much for putting up with that. We really, really, really appreciate it. And also, I think I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a series. We kind of have a series of webcasts that deal with penetration testing, breaking into computer systems. We have a series of webcasts dealing with defensive techniques, and Rita would be a huge part of that. And there's going to be more coming from that. But I want to look at some threat actors together as a group, and then I want to give you guys just 3 things to work on before our next webcast. Just some three things that you can do to drive your vendors completely insane. It sounds weird whenever I'm like, oh, 3 things to work on. It sounds like it's some type of motivational speaker crap. And I was trying to find a funny picture of people together that was funny, that wasn't porn, and I just failed. So let's jump in. This is brought to you by Wild West Hackin' Fest, the most hackin' fest in the West. And check it out. It's going to be October 27th to the 28th in Deadwood, South Dakota. If you guys haven't had a chance, check out Deadwood, South Dakota specifically. What is it? Dead Weird is their big Halloween party.
Costume party.
We're doing it right before, and it's awesome. I think there's a run. Do they do that Dead Weird run every year? Or
yeah, I think that maybe be the week before. It's like a zombie run. So you have people dressed as zombies chasing you. I'm not sure when that is, but it's a fun place. It's a good time. John will be there.
I will be there. And Paul's going to be there. Dave Kennedy's going to be there. We're going to have Kevin Johnson. We're going to have Larry. We basically, DigiNinja is coming in from the UK.
All the things.
Yeah, we have all the things. So please, please, please check it out. We'll be sure to get that set up. And we are going to record as many of the talks as we can and get those posted as well. So check out Dead Weird and Wild West Hackin' Fest on the 27th, 28th. It's also the most hands-on hacking conference we can think of. We're going to have a SDR lab. So if you've never done any software-defined radio hacking, come show up, and we're going to have hacking a garage door opener and hacking a car that you can come right up and you can do it. We're also going to have Internet of Things. We're going to have a whole bunch of Internet of Things crap that we can find. We're going to be doing JTAGs. We're going to be doing soldering irons. We're going to do that. We have a capture the flag set up. Now, Sarah, my idea is, I don't know if this is going to get approved by Erica and you or not, but what I want to do is find a really junky car for the software-defined hacking radio.
Yes, we have gotten that approved.
We did get that approved.
John approved that.
All right, I approved that.
He doesn't remember, but he did. So we're going to hack a car.
And then the winner of the capture the flag, we want him to get the hoopty. So if you win the CTF, then you get this really junked out hoopty of a Ford Taurus. So check it out. It's just going to be a ridiculous amount of fun.
Also, there's training before Wild West Hacking Fest.
That's right.
And that's on the
website. We got Deviant is giving some training on breaking into locks. We also have Tim Tomes is giving some web pen testing training. And we also have training for software-defined radio hacking by Paul Clark. So just a really, really cool amount of training and stuff going on. So check it out. We're trying to, we'd like to shoot for at least, I think, 300 people. I think we're well on our way to getting there. And it's just going to be a good time. We couldn't get a psychedelic polka band yet because that guy was really expensive. I had no idea psychedelic polka was that hot of a commodity. But enough chat.
October.
Let's go into especially in October, right before, never mind. All right, so I think I'm just going to go full tilt and just be like, I hate threat intelligence feeds. Like a lot. I have a seething level of hatred for cyber threat intelligence feeds. And I'm sorry about the rant, but it kind of sets up what we're going to be talking about in this webcast, especially the 3 things that we're going to be discussing from a command and control perspective. So let's talk about cyber threat intelligence feeds, and SIMs I can also throw in this as well. I'll talk about them more on the next slides. But cyber threat intelligence feeds are really preying on our most base instincts as human beings for identifying and dealing with threats. For example, as evolution continued to progress, we basically learn, don't eat the red flour, don't touch the frying pan, don't lick weird frogs. And at a base level, whenever we identify a threat, we try to categorize and define that threat. And that's what human beings are really, really, really good at. We're very good at pattern recognition and identifying what is actually going on, what things are safe, what things are not safe, because that's what you have to do from an evolutionary perspective. And it works in nature, and it also works in marketing. Because, you know, if you have somebody comes up to you and they say, we're going to create a product that's going to identify all of the malware, I'm holding it still, identify all of the malware, and then we're going to write signatures for that malware, and then we're going to stop the malware from running. At a base level, your intelligence, or even probably your hindbrain, identifies that, recognizes that, and says that makes sense. And it's horrible in IT security. And the reason why it's horrible in IT security is in nature, how a threat evolves. Kind of you evolve with it over hundreds, thousands of years over time. And these things kind of go in conjunction with each other. However, if you're dealing with IT security, you're dealing with threats and threat actors who can modify and change what they do at the drop of a hat. This is one of those consistent themes that we've been discussing at Black Hills Information Security in our blogs and bypassing security products. And that's what we're trying to get away from in this industry. We're trying to get people away from trying to identify a static threat and defining a defense for that static threat and come up with more architectural approaches. And this webcast will be kind of the beginning of that as well. And when you're thinking of threat intelligence feeds and the way that they like to integrate them across your entire environment, it's basically like taking a concept of blacklist antivirus, and then you make a really, really complicated set of rule sets, indicators of compromise, YARA rules, all these different things, to identify that quote-unquote malware in your organization. And you're getting these rules and these kind of feeds from somebody else in the hopes that that's going to show up in your organization. And it's not going to work. You're not going to see the perfect yellow frog. You're not going to see a crazy hobo who wants ninja lessons. You're not going to see a particular flower that if you eat it, it is going to kill you. It is not static. The whole entire concept of risk, with threat times vulnerability at its core, is an idea that we can mathematically define what a threat is. We can mathematically define what our vulnerabilities are, when in fact these two components of the risk score are very fluid. They are constantly changing. So let's talk about some threat actors, though. I do think that there is a tremendous amount of value in understanding what threat actors do. I think there's a tremendous amount of value. I think you start losing that value whenever you're trying to identify the very specific tools, techniques, and procedures that an attacking group goes through. So let's go through some general rules of threat actors. And I stole a lot of this from 511 at SAN. Seth Meisner and Eric Conrad talk about this all the time. First and foremost, threat actors, they will exploit you. Accept it. We need to stop looking at security solutions that are endpoint security solutions or overall security solutions that are going to stop threat actors dead in their tracks. We saw the stuff with Cylance a few weeks ago. Before the stuff with Cylance, you had NSS Labs that kind of took a digger against CrowdStrike. You saw, what was it, Trend Micro had a bunch of things that were released as well. So you're seeing a lot of problems with these endpoint security products, and the idea that you can create a product that is ultimately going to detect every single threat actor that may come down the line. So you're going to get exploited. Most likely, like we're talking in the 90s percentage-wise, you're going to get exploited through phishing. Somebody's going to send a link into your organization, and you're going to be compromised. Possibly through remote exploitation. That is a possibility that you may be exploited through a standard remote exploit through like a web server or something like that. Now, web servers are completely different. Is that my phone? In the other room, behind the curtain of silence, behind the door that is shut, and now my phone is ringing. So
okay, onwards.
Onwards and upwards. All right. So web attacks are a completely different creature. We'll handle that separately. But that is kind of a key point. You will be exploited. Expect that. Also, attackers are going to persist. Do you have the ability in your organization to monitor and look for deviations from the norm for your auto-start entry points on your Windows computer systems? Attackers will also pivot. They'll try to move around in your environment. That's kind of east-west movement post-exploitation. So can you detect things like Bloodhound and PowerShell Empire? Can you detect whenever a user account is now concurrently logged on to 14 different systems? You need to be able to identify effectively that lateral movement in your organization. They will escalate, and I'll talk more about this when we talk about the MITRE attack framework, and they will ultimately phone home.
What's ASEP?
That stands for Auto Start Entry Points. Auto Start Entry Points. So we'll talk about that in a later series of webcasts, but that is one of the things that is very, very, very important. So when we're going to talk about today is we're going to be focusing on phoning home. We're going to be talking about the basics of understanding beaconing and command and control traffic. And I'm going to give you three really cool command and control frameworks that you can use to give your organization a really good threat profile of post-exploitation, how well your organization can detect that activity on your network and on your systems. Now, did you guys notice something? This is one of those things. There was a series of jokes that came out over the past few weeks that was talking about the hacker hoodie. And this is a meme that shows up all of the time. Anytime you have any news articles anywhere, there's always a concept, a picture of something like a bad guy sitting at a keyboard with a hoodie draped over their head. They have maybe a full ski mask on. And we joke about it all the time, but I got to thinking about why. Why was it that this concept of the hacker seemed to resonate so well in the community? And I think the mysterious characteristic of hackers is their defining quality, and that's not a good thing. The reason why that's not a good thing is whenever you have this idea of somebody that's got a hood, you can't see their face. You can't see what they're doing. You can't see where they're at. You can't see what their skills are. It's basically this very mysterious figure that is almost a force of nature that can't be dealt with. And if you look at your event log monitoring, your antivirus threat intelligence feeds, they basically feed off that base lack of knowledge about what attackers actually do. And that's why blacklisted AV, that's why threat intelligence feeds resonate. Because they think if we can start learning narratives about specific attackers, we're going to somehow develop this archetype of what an attacker is. We'll be able to defend against that specific attacker, and then we'll be secure, i.e. we're going to stop licking the frog, we're going to stop eating the flower, and so on. Cyber evil does not work that way. It just doesn't. They change so dramatically and so quickly that we can't develop those really hard and fast rule sets for trying to identify and deal with individual hackers. So vendors then begin the process of trying to trick us into trying to watch absolutely everything. And this is catastrophic. This is something that has been detrimental in this industry for quite some time. It continues to carry forth, and it continues to be the products that we are constantly being sold. We're going to watch every single file in your environment. We're going to watch every single process that's running in memory. We're going to watch every single network connection that's leaving your environment for full packet capture. We're going to grab every single event log or log that throws this log. We're all going to throw it to a massive aggregator, and it is going to effectively define and identify attackers for you. And it's crap. It doesn't work, folks. It never has, and it never will. The amount of organizations we come across that have SIM solutions that are effective in detecting attackers in their organization is very small. Like, you're talking single-digit percentages, maybe even 1Z, 2Z percentages, which means as an approach it is fundamentally flawed. When you have products like, what's the other one, ProtectWise, where they're doing full packet capture up to the cloud, what the hell is the value of doing that? Seeing absolutely every single packet so you can do reassembly sounds like a fantastic idea, but it's horrible whenever you actually try to assemble it and think about that at scale. Looking at every single event log, your SIM vendors are selling you their products, and they're scaling their products based on the total number of event logs that are hitting them. And in the reality, they have maybe 10% of all the event logs that hit your SIM actually have rules that do any type of analysis whatsoever on that specific event log. So you have 90% of the crap that is in your SIM does nothing, will provide you with nothing. Now, the argument is made, I believe incorrectly, that if something does go wrong, you want to make sure that you have those event logs just in case. That's ridiculous because you don't know what those event logs actually are. You don't know what every single packet is doing. You can't even begin to try to understand how you would aggregate and look at every single process in your organization. But it seems like a good idea, but it is in fact a horrible, horrible idea. And it's all revolving around the idea or the concept that we do not understand hackers. We do not understand attackers, so we therefore try to watch everything, or more accurately, we try to get vendors that try to watch absolutely everything for us, develop highly complicated blacklists, and that's somehow now going to work. So I wanted to go through a couple of attackers, and here you have the wonderful hacker in the hoodie. And actually, if you look up Carbank or Anurak, or however it's pronounced, this is actually the picture that pops up because a bunch of articles got this stock photo and they reused it. Now, they target banks and they leverage legitimate credentials. Now, we've talked about this in the past with Recon NG, Have I Been Pwned, Pwnlist, a bunch of services going to Pastebin, trying to identify if you have any credentials that are compromised on third-party websites. And this is a very effective technique for BHIS and breaking into organizations. They create a service and they use run DLL32. Now, the reason why I talk about this is whenever you start researching a bunch of threat actors, you see that again and again and again and again. The attacker generates a service, they use run DLL32 to actually infect and launch their malware, inject it into memory. You see that same technique used over and over again. Macros and Word documents. We use macros and Word documents almost weekly at BHIS. In fact, macros and Word documents have been around since I got started in computer security in 1999. Names its malware as SVC host. Well, I think we could find hundreds of threat actors that name their malware SVC host. They name their malware SVC host because it blends in. Services controller host on your system, you're going to have 10, 15, 20, or 50 services controller hosts running on your computer system. They disable security tools. Well, yeah, duh. I mean, we don't usually disable them, but we basically can hijack them or migrate into them, rendering them just not effective. Running netsh commands to disable firewalls or pulling down wireless profiles. This is something we see again and again, yet again, for a number of different threat attackers. Now, this is actually one that I think is interesting. They use web services via Google Apps script as a command and control, very similar to things like GCAT. And I'll talk more about GCAT with the Nishang framework a little bit later. But there's nothing about what this group is doing that is incredibly unique. Now, this group may have been pioneers at one point with some of their techniques and their tactics, and I'm not ripping on them saying they're script kiddies, but what I'm saying is there's lots of people that are doing the exact same thing as this group. Once again, not trying to put them down or anything, because sometimes they get all offended and they get all uppity, but the point is we see these exact same tactics again and again and again. So let's talk about Gothic Panda. People like to call it APT number 3. They were targeting United States companies. They shifted over to Hong Kong. They use 0 days from time to time. And I think this is kind of interesting with the NSA breach that all of us are currently going through with the shadow brokers right now. There's a number of 0 days that they were using. That's an indication of an advanced attacker, nation-state level attacker. They schedule tasks for future malware to run. That's been around since 1999 in the Hacking Exposed Windows 2000 books, right? They use odd ports like port 81. They use a SOX 5 proxy as a C2 channel. Schedule task abuse to do elevation. They use PowerShell. As I decided to delve into cyber threat intelligence feed, it absolutely floored me how often a cyber threat intelligence feed on a specific actor would go through and say they use tools like PowerShell. Like, we can write a signature for detecting Gothic Panda because they use PowerShell. One of my favorites was, and I'm not making this up, ping. There is a number of cyber threat intelligence feeds that you can look at. Whenever they're identifying tools that an attacker uses, they say that the attacker used ping or ipconfig, as though you can write a signature saying, well, you know, this bad guy used PowerShell, they actually used weird services, and they were using port 81. Well, that's Gothic Panda. That's such a load of garbage, it's not even funny. A lot of bad guys could be using these same techniques as well. Local information capture from the system, custom tool or account discovery and domain configuration. But those custom tools, they basically utilized SMB, standard SMB traffic across the domain. Once again, not ripping on these groups at all, but what I'm saying is they're using the exact same tactics again and again. Emissary Panda, credential logger on Exchange, which I actually thought was pretty cool. OPM hack, credential dumping with GSEC dump, which is a tool that many people have been using for a long time. DLL sideloading of antivirus, I believe that they were targeting Kaspersky. They use ports 53 and web for data exfiltration and command and control. We're going to talk more about that with DNS here a little bit. Scheduled task abuse, yet again. They use RAR from the recycler directory, and they use legitimate credentials. You're already starting to see patterns and themes where these attackers are doing the exact same thing as each other. Now, I got to be honest, the reason why I put this presentation together is I honestly thought if I could just spend time with the cyber threat intelligence feed and I could try to understand it the way that people that love cyber threat intelligence feeds love it, I would come to the same conclusions and see what they see, and I didn't. I didn't see anything that made me think that these are tremendously valuable to organization. The reason why is I kept seeing the exact same tools, the exact same tactics being used again and again and again and again. Just about the only thing that I noticed with these particular cyber threat intelligence feeds that provided value was target and motivations. What are the different cyber threat intelligence groups motivated to try to do? and who are they working for in some situations. You can basically say, hey, we have China coming after us because we're a bank in Hong Kong. Well, that's valuable intel whenever you're talking to executives. But from a technical perspective, trying to detect and eradicating them, no, it doesn't provide much of anything. The only thing it does is provide a narrative to try to explain it to other people in management within an organization in order to get the funding and the resources that are required in order to effectively try to deal with the attackers. That's it. That's the only thing I could see with it. We had Fin7 targeting retail and hospitality sectors. They targeted point of sale terminals, fondness for standard backdoors. Once again, we have an APT group, that is using standard built-in backdoors that they can pull off online. Backdoors like poison ivy. Why would they do that? Once again, the ability to blend in. Fileless malware that does direct memory injection. That's something that's been around for a very, very, very long time in malware. Phishing, but once again, isn't everybody phishing? Macros, yet again, but aren't people constantly using macros? PowerShell and DNS, yet again. We're seeing the exact same thing again and again and again across all of these different actors. So I'm constantly asking while I'm going through this, what is the value in looking through and trying to develop a specific signature for someone like Emissary Panda or Gothic Panda or what do we have, Fin7 or Fin6, which is the next one that's targeting retail and hospitality sectors. The point is they're reusing the exact same techniques again and again and again and again. I did like Fin6. They used a Windows VPN on compromised system to open up network connections outbound. They used Hernan Ocha's Windows credential editor. They used SQL and service discovery. I think we had Derek that did a blog post talking about this. They use Plink, which is SSH client for command and control. So you see these same things. They gain access through phishing. They pivot laterally, looking through SMB connections and SMB shares around an environment, and they set up some form of command and control traffic leaving the environment. Those same rules show up again and again and again in an organization. Deep Panda, I think this is the last one, and then I finally lost it, and I didn't want to spend any more time going through it. Anthem and other government telco healthcare providers, they use PowerShell, they use WMI, they use NetUse, they use RegServe32 and sticky keys, which I thought was kind of neat. So all of this led me down to believe that we need to stop looking at trying to identify very specific attackers that are trying to break into organizations, and instead we need to step back and look at it kind of like bingo. Let's put up a capabilities matrix. Let's talk about the tactics that are used not by a specific attacker, but the actual techniques and tactics that are used by a large number of bad guys. And instead of trying to find the bad guys in our network, let's instead change our focus to recreating what these bad guys do and seeing if we can detect that. Not trying to look at each individual threat actor and detecting that threat actor, but cross-sectionally, looking at the different tools, techniques, and procedures that they use, using those in our own organization, and instead of trying to attribute it to one specific group or another, we test it in our organization, not as part of a pen test per se, but we test it in our own organization to see if we can detect it. So thing one, the first thing is DNS cap by Ron Bose. I've given you guys the link here. We've talked about it a number of times, but you saw that there was a number of threat actors that were using DNS or just UDP53 egress out of an environment for a command and control channel in an organization out to their command and control server. And DNS Cat 2 works fantastic because it sends all of its command and control traffic through well-formed DNS. Now, we use it all the time. In fact, many antivirus engines don't even detect DNS Cat 2 raw. You can simply run it on a computer system and it's not going to go at all. But they're starting. They're starting. In fact, we're starting to see some firewall, IDS, IPS vendors that are starting to do analysis of DNS traffic to detect things like DNS Cat, to try to find those command and control backdoors over DNS. And DNS Cat 2 isn't the first backdoor. We had Iodine, we had Loki from years ago. There was tons and tons of tools over the years that have used DNS as a command and control out of an environment. Unfortunately, what a lot of vendors are doing is they're writing very specific signatures for this specific tool. That's because a pen tester goes in, they use DNS Cat 2, then that company goes to their firewall vendor, their IPS vendor, and they say, look, these guys were able to get out of the environment, you didn't detect it, so they look at the header information and they say, well, it's clear text, we'll look for anything that has DNS traffic that has C://. And from that point on, they'll detect DNS Cat 2. Well, you could actually set up encryption and make it more difficult. But it's some sort of progress. And the reason why I'm asking you guys to start doing this is if it's just a handful of pen testing firms that are trying to do this, or a handful of firms that are trying to get tools that are going to start detecting this type of thing, the only way it works effectively is if all of our organizations start breaking our security products, creating help desk tickets to get them to fix it and start detecting things like DNS backdoors in our environment. So instead of saying, oh, well, which APT threat actors use DNS? Well, we had Fin7, they used DNS. We also had Emissary Panda that used DNS. So we had 2 that were there out of all the ones that I was able to go through that used DNS. We're going to detect just those 2. No, unilaterally go across the entire organization and try to identify if you can detect DNS from your various enclaves going outbound. If you can set up a DNS Cat2 server on the outside of the environment and it runs and there's no alerts, you have a gaping security hole that a number of different quote-unquote advanced attackers can actually take advantage of for command and control. And what's worse, this isn't new. This has been around forever. It's time for us to start testing this and holding our vendors accountable and starting to develop security kind of support structure implementations that'll actually detect these. Thing 2, Nishang. Amazing, amazing utility. In fact, I want to go right to this link and actually open that up for you guys. So I want to show you why I like this tool so much and the reason why we threw it in. Here we go. So having multiple different command and control methods is important. And it's not just an issue of trying, once again, to say that we can detect an odd port 81 communication or an HTTP communication. But the reason why I love this tool is we can set up a number of different RATs that have a number of different protocols. We can use a RAT that communicates over HTTP. I have that one highlighted right now. We can set up another RAT that does HTTPS to communicate outbound. We can do just straight shell over TCP. We can do one-liners. We can communicate over UDP. We can communicate over WMI. We can even use GCAT. Now, the reason why we love GCAT is because GCAT was originally created by Benjamin Donnelly, took over by ByteBleeder online, and you just provide it a user ID and a password for Google Mail, and then all of its command and control is going to be sent over well-formed emails. Now, these are tools that are available. There's a number of different attackers and nation-state attackers and advanced persistent threat groups that use that type of command and control. Maybe we need to start testing that command and control in our environment today. So just fantastic little utilities to check multiple different types of command and control out of an environment. And if you can effectively stop HTTP, raw TCP connections, and you can effectively stop some basic UDP and DNS, and, well, we'll get to GCAT more here in a second, and also beaconing, you're in the top echelon of organizations whenever it comes to security, which unfortunately there are still bypass techniques, but the point remains most organizations can't detect any of these things. So we're talking about literally an afternoon to try to run DNSCAT and run Nishang and actually set it up, get the command and control out of an environment, and see what you can detect. See what you can detect before your next pen test, and that'll help drive your pen tester insane. And we do a lot of that with our customers. We're like, here's some of the basic things that we're going to be doing whenever we do a pen test for command and control traffic leaving an environment. And then we allow the organization to spend some time, hopefully they have a few weeks before we start our pen test, to get a good firm understanding of what they are able to detect and what they're not able to detect before we even get there. And ideally, this would be something, once again, that all organizations would be using. So go ahead and set this up in your organization. It is a fantastic little utility. We used it in our blog with bypassing silence last week. So fantastic little utility. Check it out and use it effectively. The next one I want to spend some more time talking about. We had a webcast where I went over it briefly, but I'm going to bring it up again because I don't think I've talked about it in a couple of years. I've mentioned it, but I haven't actually gone through and used VSAgent. So we created and we released a tool called VSAgent as a command and control backdoor that was really designed to get different vendors and security organizations starting to think about beaconing, trying to understand how could they effectively detect beacons within their organization, what does a beacon look like, how can they actually work with it to try to pull out the traffic that way as well. So we need the ability to detect these backdoors regardless of their protocols. And I think that that's a movement in the direction that all of us need to go now. It should not be detection of signatures. Like I said, a lot of vendors detect DNS Cat2 by simply looking at some of the header information that it sends and then detecting it on that header information. And to be honest, vendors are also detecting VSAgent and they're detecting it on its header information as well. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a couple of seconds, here just a few moments. So we have some fantastic little utilities that we've released for free. There's no reason for you to not set them up and run them in your organization. So I want to show this one to you. I've got VSAgent running on 2 different systems. We've got it running on a Windows system here. This is just VSAgent running on a Windows system. It's a Python script, but you can easily convert your Python scripts into standalone executables online. So that's pretty easy to do. But I've got a local one here that I wanted to spend some time looking at. So let me clear this out real quick. Let me cancel that out. So up here at the top, you can see that I have this one screen. I'm going to try to make that a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see it. This is the command and control that is running. I'm running VSAgent on a Linux computer system. And down here in the terminal, I'm going to set this profile to bold. Maybe I can set the font to be something bigger so you guys can see it a little bit better. There we go. Close it out. All right, there we go. So on the top we have the backdoor, and on the bottom we have a TCP dump of the data capturing that backdoor. So I'm running TCP dump, setting the snap length to 0. My interface is local loopback, and I'm just grabbing my command and control traffic. And then -A means I want to see the ASCII decode of the backdoor. And I'll talk about what that backdoor traffic is. Let me do this real quick. Let me open up gedit, because I don't want this bouncing all of the time. Now we put all of our command and controls traffic in a well-formed HTTP request. And let me see if I can do this. Preferences, try to make this one bigger. Editor, font, colors. I don't want you to do that. I'm going to kick this up to, there we go. And we're going to make it bold. And then we'll select it. All right, here we go. So this is what we did. And as we said, this was meant to be just a very, very, very basic base64 encoded backdoor. So all of our traffic is sent through well-formed HTTP. We aren't even using HTTPS. Let me show you what the full requests actually look like here. So let me clear out the grep view state so you can see the full requests. So we just got SYN, FIN, got data going through. Here in a couple of seconds, you should see some view state data going through. There we got our agent, okay, and the data that's going through. So right here, let me go back up. This is the beacon. I just had it, and then it went away. Here we go. So this is the beacon as it connects. So what it does is it makes a request of a web server, and it says document type HTML, HTML head, close head, body. Form, method, post, action, and then it says input type hidden. It's a hidden input field. And the name of the parameter is view state. Now we use the view state, it's underscore underscore view state, but the reason why we use underscore underscore view state is because we want to use something that .NET ASP networks use, or web servers use. And view state is a beautiful parameter because it's a randomized parameter and it is variable in length. It can get longer and shorter. So it's really hard for the vendors to actually detect it, right? You can't write a signature or something that is its very nature is a variable parameter and it's variable in length. That makes it very, very difficult to detect. So this is the full document request that's going back and forth, and that's the beacon. So now whenever I take that, I can pipe that through grep and I can pull out view state, and now it's only pulling out the line that I'm specifically interested in. So how do we actually pull that out? So here it is. There's our base64 encoded data. You know it's base64 encoded, or at least the dead giveaway is it ends in %3D, %3D. That is an equal sign in hex. So if I run something in my VSAgent, watch how that changes. Now it beacons once every 30 seconds. So if I do PSAUX, if I run that command, I run it up here, and then I hit enter, it queues it over here on the left. And in 30 seconds, the backdoor is going to beacon to us, and then we're going to kick the response back, and there's the base64 encoded data of what we have up here. All right, so that is the output. So if I were to type ID, I can hit ID, it queues up the ID command, and in about 10, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, wherever we are in the interval in between, you're going to see the response come back, and you're going to see the view state parameter go back up, the response come back, and then we have a slightly longer response there. So this particular backdoor is important because it is a very, very strong heartbeat. In this situation, I think it beacons out once every 10 seconds or 30 seconds. I honestly can't remember what I have this one set up for by default. But we want to go through and say, okay, can you detect this? So all you'd need to do is set up a VSAgent on a web server someplace online. And then what you would do is you would embed the client inside in your network. It can be an executable that's been converted from Python down to a standalone executable, or you can run it from a Linux system. It really doesn't matter. You're not trying to bypass AV with this tool. What we're trying to do is we're trying to see if your security network appliances, network security appliances, like your IDS, IPS, or your firewall, have the ability to detect a very, very simple beacon. And this is absolutely the training wheel beacon. A couple of things that make it a training wheel beacon. You can see the string every single time is the exact same string for the beacon. If we actually take that beacon, we can actually pipe it through strings. Just copy and paste this real quick.
What version of Linux are you using?
It'll run on any Ubuntu version of Linux. This version of Linux is just a Debian version. Nothing terribly impressive about it at all, but I've got it installed on a Ubuntu 16.04 system. And we should have Jordan and Kent just create a blog on setting it up and get it running, and then everybody can have it. So I can take my string, paste it through. Oh, that sucks. And then I can pipe it through strings. And you can actually see the data associated with it, do the base64 encoding and decoding of it. So what it's basically saying is you have the agent, it has the MAC address for the agent, and it's repeating that again and again and again. And you can actually pump it through base64 decode as well. Oh crap, where did my terminal go? I just lost my terminal. Echo, let me send it through that again, paste it in, Control C, go up. I'm going to kill these two things at the end. We'll just make it equal, and then we'll pipe it through base64 decode. Oh, come on. I'm typing weirdly here. Base64. I can't type to save my ass.
It helps. I mean, it doesn't help when it's on your lap.
It doesn't. This is just getting embarrassing now. There we go. So there's our base64 encoded data, and I'm going to blow away my mistypings. There we go. So it's basically saying here's the commands. It has no commands. Here's the agent information, and it gives the MAC address for the agent. You can see that agent up above. So there you have it. That's what's actually in the backdoor whenever it's beaconing outbound. And so this is something that we should run in our environment. Once again, if we're kind of looking at these three backdoors that we kind of broke down, trying to detect DNS backdoors, trying to detect HTTP, HTTPS backdoors, ICMP backdoors. I should add that in here because it does ICMP as well. ICMP backdoors, straight TCP backdoors, UDP backdoors, GCAT, and then a simple beaconing backdoor. You've just covered, if you actually just use these three tools, you've just covered a tremendous amount of ground in being able to detect most of the advanced attackers that are out there and their command and control servers that are out there. So this is VSAgent running. We're just piping it through base64 and we're decoding it. You could also use strings to turn your base64 data into strings that get output. You could use a Python script, you could use Ruby, you could use Perl. There's a number of ways to do this. You want to avoid the ignore garbage. Let me explain why you want to avoid the ignore garbage command. So if I do that PSAUX command, in here again, it's going to list out all the processes. Watch how big it gets, and we're converting %3D into equal signs are going to be converted to %3D to make sure that the boundaries line up. You're also going to have carriage and return line feeds right here. The %0As are carriage return line feeds. And the problem with those, if you do ignore garbage, it'll just ignore the %, but it'll try to render the 0A because those are valid base64. So what we usually do is we pop it through set or awk to convert these %0As into line feeds, take the %3D and turn that into an equal, delete any %2Fs, and then you get a really nice clean output. But as I said, we're not using any encryption, we're not using any keys, we're not using any randomness, it's just straight base64 encoded data. And I'll show you guys where this is we put all of this crap up here. Let me show you. Tiny URL 504 extra 2.
So some people are having a hard time getting stuff off there. They say that some of the stuff isn't available. Do you think Dropbox bombed you again?
They could have bombed me. It depends on how you're getting there. If you follow the link directly, you'll be fine. But if you're trying to use 504-extra by itself, that one they killed. So I had to create a new one. So the new one is, let me put it up here for everybody. There's no dash.
Oh, I put it in the
What's that?
I put it in the chat box too. 504 extra 2.
Yep, that's it. That's the one. We used to have 504-extra.
You can click on it in the chat box too.
Yep, yeah, totally trust that link. If you do 504 extra by itself, I'll show you what that looks like. And this is something, a lot of people have had problems with this. It says you no longer can access it. Okay, so that sucks. That's not cool at all. So that's basically Dropbox went through, and there we go. So now if you do 504 extra 2, it should get there and allow you to access it. And then you have VSAgent 504 is here. You've got the Python, which is the agent itself. The VS GUI, which is this. That's the GUI right there. And then the service right here receives the remote connections coming back in. And you also have to have common.php. And you have to set up PHP, and you need to make sure you have a LAMP stack, your Apache LAMP stack with I don't think we're using MySQL for it, but it needs to have a PHP server running Apache, and you're up and running. Also, for GCAT, what's up? Yeah, it's
somebody said they don't whitelist tiny URL, so they're just wondering what's the full length to your Dropbox.
Here, let me actually put that in for everyone. Just give me a second. What question is it?
Chat.
Go to chat, and I can send this to the entire audience.
Yep.
Okay, here's the raw Dropbox link for people that want to get to it directly. So you got that. We also have an older version of GCAT if you want to use GCAT by itself. This is the one that was created by Benjamin Donnelly a few years back. The real GCAT is by ByteBleeder right here. And you can pull this one down. He says he's not maintaining it anymore. It is actually still functional. If you pull it down, it works just fine. And Nishang supports GCAT functionality over PowerShell, so you can use a PowerShell agent. So and then the final one, like I said, that one is DNSCat 2 by Ron Bose, and that one you can download too, and you guys can throw it up on your system. So it's very, very easy to get this stuff installed. Looks like Luke has been working on DNSCat right there. So Luke, I guess BHIS is helping support this too.
Luke is awesome.
Luke is everywhere. Luke is one of, I think he's the only intern that we would let actually pen test anybody right now. He's just awesome. Luke is Mark Baggett's son, and Mark is a senior instructor with the SANS Institute. Let's just say that the Luke Baggett apple didn't fall far from that tree at all. But it has beautiful instructions to get DNSCat 2 up and running. So yeah, just getting these 3 tools running, everybody, is going to be fantastic for giving you a good idea of what your visibility is for command and control traffic out of your environment. So why just 3? Because I had to start somewhere, right? Playing with backdoors that emulate a majority of the APT. I did ATP, which is adenine triphosphate, which is used in, there we go. Let's set that up, save that, there we go. Advanced persistent threat during command and control channels is an absolutely good start, but it is just a start. And you could also use social engineering toolkit. You can use Metasploit. We just wanted to give you some other variants to play with that we use. We have noticed that a lot of the ones used by Metasploit, that the AV engines are starting to get a lot better at detecting those as well. And also, it's kind of an effort to try to use the bully pulpit to start putting pressure on vendors to make things better. I mean, we have 450 people here today. Oh, God. That's a lot of people. But if you guys could all run these, and then all of you open up tickets to every single one of your vendors,
my gosh,
that would be a beautiful, beautiful thing, right? Yeah, start poking them, break their tool, and then ask for a discount. And I want to show you kind of where it's kind of neat whenever I come across things that are just like beautiful online. If you guys get a chance, tell the people at MITRE that they're doing a fantastic job with their ATTA and CK. Now, they're really trying to do, cyber threat attribution, and that's fine. But how they're going about doing it is beautiful. So this is something that you could literally play bingo with, right? Like you can say, how do they persist? How do they do lateral movement inside of an organization using pass the hash? And these are not individual threat actors, but this is the matrix that they have set up that basically says these are the things that we're seeing cross-sectionally across all of these different attackers that are out there. And some of them you can't really test for. So if you're looking at privilege escalation, they have very, very, very specific vulnerabilities that show up over here, or initial execution exploitation through a particular remote exploit. Some of those you won't be able to test for very easily at all, but some of them are very consistent. Like we're looking for credentials in files. We can do that with File Finder and Share Finder. We can do credential dumping. We can do that through volume shadow copies. We can do that. Don't ever do that on a domain controller with hash dump. Doing network sniffing, we've been doing that for years. But there's a number of these things that you can actually sit down and you can be like, well, if I want to do install utility, how does that work for getting execution on a system? Well, you can find Subt's blog. He's got some blogs that talk about how to do this. And this is great. Instead of us looking at each individual attacker, let's start capturing all of their different techniques, and let's see if we can start detecting those techniques whenever they run on the inside of our environment. This makes more sense because as we move forward over the next few years, we're going to have, and I see that the site is actually puking out, we are going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of new threat actors coming on the playing field over the next few years. If you're looking over the next decade, why are we trying to track every single one of them again? Instead, look at the consistent themes as far as what they're doing. And then what's beautiful is once you get familiar with these different techniques on how they do credential manipulation, how they do service manipulation, how they do lateral movement, all of a sudden now you're better at detecting that attack from your SIM perspective because you tested it in your organization, you know what the stimulus is, you know what the response is, and now we can go back to our SIM vendors and be like, no, I'm not going to log every single event log. I'm going to log the handful of event IDs that are important for detecting these types of attacks. And you can continue to play in that land of fear that there might be something that comes up that you won't have a signature written for, but crap, you're already playing that game anyway. You might as well be a little bit more intelligent about it. Also, VHIS, we have this spreadsheet. I know I keep saying I'm going to modify this, but we have the C2 work spreadsheet from a few years ago, and this is a really, really good little spreadsheet, and it has some of the basics that you should have, the very, very, very smallest of basics of being able to detect, like DNSCAT, custom VSAgent malware, using Metasploit, PyInjector, PowerSploit, simple encoded malware. These are things that everyone should be able to detect, and your team, more importantly, should have the ability to be able to run these offensively and know how these attacks work. Okay. All right, I want to say thank you for attending. I'm at StrandJS on Twitter. I think that Twitter is interesting because I feel like I've just now started to use it because I have time, but I feel like I'm at a graveyard sometimes. A lot of people are moving on to other things. Also, my email address, my phone number, and Paul's information is here as well. And also, we do this stuff for a living. If you're looking for a pen test, we try to give as much as we can away for free to make sure that our organizations are in the best possible position that they can be at before we pen test them. Because we don't gauge ourselves being successful based on how many shells we pop or how quickly we get domain administrator, but really are our customers getting secure or not? And that's kind of a lie. I mean, all of our testers, they get excited on how many shells they pop and things like that. But in reality, we're pushing them very, very hard to try to make the organizations that we're testing more secure. I wanted to leave the last few minutes available for any questions that you guys may have. It looks like Sierra has been very, very busy.
I try to keep up with you guys.
We do. Wow.
Okay, so from the beginning, if you hit your don't show answered questions.
I'm going to uncheck that.
Okay. And then you can go up to the top.
Okay, so we can start at the beginning. We talked more about blankets. We got winky eyes.
Oh, no, it didn't work. Okay, so the first question is, is Sysmon with Graylog a possible solution for ASCP and detecting lateral movement?
You're absolutely possible for detecting the lateral movement only if you're doing a stacked analysis for trying to identify multiple concurrent logins. That would be what I would recommend with it. But as far as auto start entry points, you can basically do a poll across your entire environment of your auto start entry points, utilizing tools like I just had a complete brain fire. It's by Dave Hull. He works at Microsoft. I can't believe I just completely forgot what the tool was. I remember the guy's name. I remember how to run it. I could pull up some slides. I'm sure that there's Kanza. That's it. Kanza. Okay. It used to be called Malsang, but it's now Kanza is the tool. And it'll actually go through and pull all those auto start entry points for you, which is very, very neat. And then it does stacked analysis for them as well. Don't mean to kick a dead horse, but we have slides and extras. I missed the first half. Will the recording be found? Sean, just be watching the BHIS blog, and we will be posting it up there.
Yes.
And we will shoot out a link to everybody that attended as well. Everybody that was here will get a link. As well.
Could you share that ATT technique matrix?
Yes, actually, that is by MITRE. That's a very good question. That's not mine, but let me get the link for everybody. And it looks like their website went down. I'm actually kind of thinking deep down a little bit that I think it's possible that we just had 400, 500 people go to their website and maybe crashed it. So here's the link to the website when it comes back up to everybody. So.
Okay. Does a VSAgent need PHP 5 or PHP 7?
I think it was originally written for PHP 5.
Okay. BHS has a RAS reputation. Thank you.
We also have the BHIS Hug of Death. Whenever we talk about a cool website, it goes down. I think this is the third or fourth time that this has happened. There's now somebody at MITRE that's like, oh my God, we're being DOSed. No, you're just having 400 people go to your website.
Are there organizations or partnerships within the industry actively trying to establish a standard of care that deflates the culture of fear propagated by many vendors within the industry?
No, right now there's nothing like that, and that is ultimately what we are trying to do. And it's kind of funny because we're not trying to deflate the culture of fear so much as build it up.
Be really afraid.
And I think that everybody out there is saying the boogeyman is going to get you. But we're trying to say not only is the boogeyman going to get you, but the tools that detect the boogeyman aren't detecting the boogeyman at all. So that is one of our the things that we're currently trying to work through. And I think that we need to stop focusing on technology and we need to start focusing on people in organizations, because the technology should always support the people, not the other way around, ever, under any circumstances. So if you're trying to defeat that culture of fear, one of the things I can recommend that you do is you start doing brown bags with executives and show them the reality of the situation. Demonstrate some of the tools that we talked about here. Give them pointers on how to protect themselves at home in their browser using Ghostery or AdBlock Plus or NoScript, and give them those tips, because you want them to start coming to you for their security knowledge and understanding about what the attacks look like out there. Found some other good things out there, some questions. Yes, we broke MITRE and we broke Dropbox. What's next? What have you seen through your clients taking advantage that have been most helpful in detecting and beaconing activity? And honestly, that's why we've been creating RITA. Real Intelligence Threat Analytics.
Oh, there was the RITA question. Is there a ready-to-use virtual machine which has RITA already installed?
No, there is not. However, if you do the install script on any Ubuntu 16.04 system, it'll turn any Ubuntu system into a RITA system for you. And
cool.
We have a webcast on that too.
Cool. Well,
Kanza, we actually had somebody that took and found the Git repository for Dave Hull.
You guys are really an awesome audience.
Yeah, I like it whenever they do my work for me.
Webcast Hug of Death.
Copy.
John is one-man DOS attack.
This one, and I'll send to all. There you go. There you got the answer. But yeah, Dave Hull did that, and I'm sure it could use an update. I'm sure that we could use more people. I'm sure that we could use more people trying to keep it up to date. Can you demonstrate how to build RITA? Yeah, I can take a couple seconds with that. Just go to blackhillsinfosec.com, go to Projects RITA, and download RITA here. Run this script right here, this install.sh. If you run that script, it will install RITA for you. I'm glad the tiny URL is now working again. Will network-based user behavioral analytics products detect beaconing? No. Not very well at all. And we can talk about that, but whenever you're talking about behavioral analytics, you're actually talking about the connections that are being made with existing user accounts and what those user accounts are doing. Not so much for detecting network beacon. And yes, you will need a tap or a mirrored port on your egress traffic that's leaving your environment before network address translation is done. And actually, do we have a link to that last webcast?
Yeah, it's on our blog. So
yeah, let me go.
And
here.
It's on our BHIS YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to.
Wait a minute, this is it right here, isn't it?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, this is the most recent.
So there's also a webcast page. but they also show up in our blog. So if you follow one or the other of those, and then I always tweet them.
Okay, there you go. Michael, you said, does Rita work on Windows 10 and Ubuntu shell? I tried. It didn't work. That's probably because Microsoft is changing things all the time.
Have you seen your clients take advantage of that? What have you seen your clients take advantage of that has been most helpful for detecting beaconing activity?
Yeah, and that's just another one that Rita is what we're trying to do, because we're not seeing a lot of products that detect that. Question, have we had a conversation with Doug Burks about integrating Rita? We have. He actually laid out a plan for us to get Rita into the security onion. And it basically boiled around getting it to a meta package and getting it able to be installed very, very simply. And that was the first step, is getting it to the point where you can just get it to an install script. What would you recommend we have when we have greater than one thing that we need to set a network tap? You could actually set, Rita's free. You can set up Rita instances on multiple different taps, locations, egress. You just need to make sure that you scale your box correctly. We do not have a pfSense plugin. The reason why is, well, at any rate, the reason why we didn't do that is because it really is heavily dependent upon Bro. And we chose Bro because it had a very strong sense of date timestamp for basically recording connections. And when we start looking down specific vendors, like if you're talking about Cisco, pfSense, well, pfSense isn't a vendor, it's just a project, right? When you start looking at a bunch of these different products that are available, open source and otherwise, they handle their concept of time differently. So that's why we didn't go through and have specific plugins for each of those architectures. Also, it is not signature-based. It doesn't actually look at a packet and say, yep, this is a beacon. It actually looks at all of your connections over the course of an entire day, 24 hours or 48 hours, to try to identify that beaconing activity. So, all right, anything else?
I think that was most of it. If we didn't get to your question, feel free to email John.
Yep.
He's always there, and thank you so much for all your participation. It's always super fun. I don't talk much. It's hard to get a question in with John, but it's fun to talk to you guys, and we really, really appreciate you being here. So, and we will record it, and it's going to be there for you in a few days.
Yep, in just a couple of days. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
Let me stop the recording first.